Welcome to this micro session on the circumstances of justice. These are sessions aimed at those just starting out in political theory, beginning level students trying to get a handle on the main ideas, concepts and thinkers, particularly within the realm of social justice. Today I'm asking the question of why we even need principles of justice. When we often talk about justice, we just assume that everyone knows what principles of justice are for, but it's interesting to understand why we need them. So we can begin by asking, well, what actually are principles of justice? Our baseline question. Following Rawls, John Rawls, we can understand principles of justice as those rules that distribute the benefits and burdens of social cooperation. So when we combine together in societies, that generates various benefits for people and also various burdens. The question is, how should those be distributed? Principles of justice are a set of rules for fair distribution of those benefits and burdens. Why is that necessary though? Why do we need principles of justice? Well, Rawls gives us an answer to this question, following the work of Scottish Enlightenment philosopher David Hume. Rawls says that principles of justice are necessitated by various circumstances about our world, and also about ourselves as human beings. And because of this confluence of circumstances, we need principles to allocate fairly the various benefits and burdens, but they also make possible human cooperation. Rawls lists two circumstances. The first one is objective circumstances. These are physical facts about us and about our world. First one is that as human beings, we're roughly physically and mentally equal. No one has vast superhuman abilities or anything like that. We're all roughly of the same stripe within a band, in terms of intelligence, natural strength and so on, such that in a situation of competition we could injure each other. No one is impervious to injury. And secondly, in our world we only have a certain set of resources, a limited amount of resources, or what Rawls calls moderate scarcity. This plays a number of roles. What we don't have is extreme scarcity. Right? It's not as though we live in a situation where there's hardly enough to keep a few of us alive, such that life is a constant struggle just to stay alive, such that we're always fighting, trying to take enough resources just to keep ourselves alive. Nor do we live in conditions of abundance, where we just pick up things off the floor and satisfy all the needs and desires that we could ever have. We don't live in either of those worlds. If we did, if the circumstances were different, if the facts about our world were different, we wouldn't need principles of justice. Under conditions of abundance, we wouldn't need them, they would be superfluous, because we could have what we wanted. Under conditions of extreme scarcity, they would be irrelevant because no one would obey them, they would just be looking to survive. But under conditions of moderate scarcity, we have resources that help us to meet our basic needs. But we also understand that we could combine to make more. We live in circumstances where cooperation makes sense. If we cooperate together, we can create more resources to make our lives go better, more fulfilling lives. We understand this through our strength and intelligence and so on, that we can combine in socially productive ways. The second set of circumstances that Rawls talks about are what he calls subjective circumstances. This is largely about our own moral psychology. We're not, Rawls says, impartially benevolent. We're not perfect altruists who just want to satisfy each other's interests and have no regard for our own interests. It's not the kind of world we live in. We're not saints in that way. Instead, we have a limited altruism. Our altruism is bounded in certain ways, such that we tend to prefer our own interests over the interests of others, or the interests of those near and dear to us over the interests of others. Our altruism is limited by the existence of our own interests. Doesn't mean that we don't care for others, we quite clearly do. But the fact that we have our own interests, and we often prefer to satisfy those, means that there can be a conflict of interest between individuals, particularly over the things that we produce, the goods that we want in order to make our lives more fulfilling. And finally, Rawls says that we have limited knowledge, limited thought, limited experience, limited judgment. We all come from different ways of life and so on. I'm different to you, you're different to the next person. And we bring all that collection of things to how we view the world. And given the same set of facts, you and I may just judge differently of them because of our different experiences, different knowledge and so on. But that's not unreasonable, right? Reasonable people can disagree about lots of things and disagree reasonably about them. because of that plurality of the world in which we live. So this is another reason, another area of possible conflict where we need principles of justice to arbitrate, to adjudicate. So our motivating question: why are principles of justice necessary? They're necessary because of the circumstances in which we live, the features of our world in which we live, such that there are things like scarcity and so on. What are the sources of conflict? Why do we need principles of justice to overcome conflict? Well, because we only have conditions of moderate scarcity, not abundance. So when we combine to make stuff, there will be conflicts of interest over that. We will create benefits, and it's about how those benefits will be distributed. We also have various sources of cooperation. The third question, which is our intelligence. We're intelligent enough by and large to understand that cooperation is beneficial for us. We know from the conditions of moderate scarcity that we can create more. And we also have a limited altruism, such that we want to help other people and we see the mutually beneficial consequences of doing so. So this should answer the question of why we need principles of justice, because of various features about our world and about us as humans that make it necessary that we have principles of justice, but also that make it possible for us to combine in the first place.